and welcome to a special edition of Checking In with New Ulm Public Library. I'm Library Director Chris Wiley, and today I'm joined by special guest Stacy Lieneman, Director of the Waseca-LeSueur Regional Library. Thanks for joining me, Stacy.
Thanks for having me.
Fall is the major book publishing season. There are lots of fantastic new titles on our library shelves, and so Stacy and I have been reading furiously over the past month, so we're here to talk about some of those books that we've read.
Absolutely.
Stacy, when I asked you to select your favorite book of the fall, you said The Trouble in Me by Jack Gantos. The publisher described this as a fiery autobiographical novel. Is that your experience?
Well, in the book, there actually is a lot of fire.
So literally a fiery
Yes,
novel.
absolutely. There's a large fireball. There is a pool that gets set on fire. But, you know, it also, Jack Gantos's writing is wonderful. It is so exciting. He's such a masterful storyteller that I feel like a fire is lit inside me when I read it, and I really would never describe any other author in that same way. It feels, I feel when I'm reading Jack Gantos's writing is the same way that I think that my 6-year-old son feels after he just eats a large bowl of ice cream. Just, you know, like the adrenaline's pumping and he's ready to go. So Jack Gantos is this Newbery Award-winning children's author, and he has written 2 memoirs. The first memoir is A Hole in My Life, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. It talks about how he gets mixed up with drug smuggling, ends up in prison, and then finds a way to become this award-winning children's author.
And he writes it that's in a way that's accessible to children or to young adults.
Yes, it is fantastic. But this is the prequel. So he is 14, and his family moves from school to school every year. He's super smart, and every time he moves to a new school, he kind of joins the geeky clubs of that school, but he never really makes a friend. So then he moves to Fort Lauderdale next to Gary Pagoda. He was just gotten back from juvie for car theft.
Uh-oh.
So Gary is looking over his fence and sees Jack burning himself from a fireball he's created in his grill. So he's created this big fireball, and it is lighting things in his yard on fire. He's rolling on the ground trying to get the fire off his clothes. And Gary sees this as, here's somebody who I could talk into doing anything. And so he goes upon this task of coming up with different scenarios to put Jack into. So meanwhile, Jack is just enamored with the attention that he's receiving from this cool guy. He's clearly not cool. And he, just imagine this scrawny, geeky guy going, I want to be you, to a juvie, a guy who just got out of juvie. So Gary Pagoda starts coming up with all these scenarios, including, filling a pool with gasoline, lighting it on fire, and Jack has to swim to the other side, and he has to go fast. And then he's also like shooting at the pool. It is crazy. That's not even the worst one, I don't think. So, but Gantos really wants to show through this story how a nice, smart kid can be led to the bad path. He's looking to find himself, And I think that's something that we all can relate to, actually. You know, the teens like to do some wild things just to show how reckless and what risk takers they are. And so it's really not as wild as once you start relating it to, oh yeah, I remember seeing this kid in my class do this, or even a few things that we may have made poor decisions on ourselves.
Haven't we all?
Yes, but he's such a great storyteller that, you know, I whip through his books and just cherish the writing.
So I sense a really profound message, but perhaps some humor as well.
Lots of humor. Just the way that Jack views the world is interesting. It's a mind like no other.
Well, my favorite fall release is completely different.
There can't be a lot of this out there.
There's no great segue to This Is Your Life, Harriet Chance by Jonathan Evison. I never read Evison before this, but happened to pick it up. It has a really interesting cover. It looks like a water, and there's a duck. It's because Harriet Chance has found out that her husband, who has died a few months previously, has booked them on a cruise. She never expected this from Bernard, but she decides she better go on this cruise. It seemed to be one of his wishes. She asks her best friend to go with her. The last minute, her best friend backs out. So Harriet boards the cruise ship alone, and there she finds out the dark secret from her husband's life. And it changes the whole nature of their marriage, everything Harriet thought was true. And so it takes you on the progression of Harriet's life, just like the 1950s TV show, This Is Your Life. So you see
Sure,
Harriet,
I see the connection.
Yeah,
Okay.
You see Harriet, different points in her life from her childhood years, very formative, big thing happened then, to marriage, to motherhood. And it goes different times. It'll pick out, it's not a chronological book, which I enjoy, picking out at different ages. So you meet up with Harriet's daughter, who joins her on the cruise, and so there's a mother-daughter relationship, as well as her husband coming back as a ghost. But you got to go with it.
Okay.
You just do, because there is some humor to it. But really, it's a bittersweet, emotional story about an every woman and her journey through life. She reminded me of Olive Kitteridge. So if you like your female heroines with a bit of an edge, this book might be for you. It's really a pretty thin book, and I just flew through it and wished I would have savored it a little bit more. Went out and got more of Evison's books. He has a couple of others, so I'm looking forward to reading more by him. So moving on to other fiction, I was excited to know that you have read Adriana Trigiani. Mm-hmm. One of our library book group's favorite books was The Shoemaker's Wife. We just adored that. It was set partly in northern Minnesota. The new book that she has out is All the Stars in the Heavens. Is there a Minnesota connection in this one?
I'm sorry to say no, there isn't. I haven't read that particular book, but I have read her Valentine series, which is all about shoemaking, and I loved that series. And so I was interested to see what she would do with the Hollywood Golden Age, and that's really what this is about. Okay. So she traces Loretta Young's private life, as she falls in love with Spencer Tracy, but due to Tracy being married, and because Young is very Catholic, she won't act upon it, and actually signs up to do a location shoot. But it's a movie with Clark Gable. So a new temptation emerges.
Boy, that's rough.
Yeah,
Clark Gable.
So not even religion can stop her Clark's also married, but he also has that smirk that's irresistible. So they end up having an affair on set, and this ends with a pregnancy. So her career is on the line. This is in the middle of the Hays Code, where strict moral standards. And so she hides the pregnancy from the press and then later adopts the child as a toddler. So the author has done some really solid research about what living during this era, being an actress in this era would mean. And then she ties in her Italian heritage by bringing in an assistant who's Italian. And then they also hide out in Italy for a while. While this story is all, beautifully told, and there are a lot of great elements to it, it's historical fiction and not a biography. So as I was reading this, I was looking up and seeing what if this was actually true, or what is kind of going off from the actual facts of their lives. And Loretta Young's descendants have claimed that Young revealed that Gable date raped her, and that is what led to this child. So to me, this changed my entire reading of the book, and I just kept getting more enraged at why would this author choose to change a horrible crime into a love story where they're being torn apart by circumstances. And so I just was really deeply disturbed by the whitewashing, and I really couldn't enjoy the book any longer. So I enjoyed the book for about 70%, and then the last 30% I was mostly just concerned and wondering if it was finally going to emerge some details. But I also thought it was interesting that the same thing happens in Gone with the Wind. It looks like Scarlett O'Hara is being date raped, and then the next morning she wakes up and she's so stretching and so happy, and it's kind of a similar process that I feel has happened here, where the reality was this date rape, and then Hollywood in this instance, a novel about Hollywood has whitewashed the whole situation. So I recommend it to readers who want to think about the ethics of writing.
That's interesting, and something I haven't heard about with that particular book.
Yeah, I think it's coming out this week.
Okay.
So I was trying to find some reviews that might discuss this topic, and I haven't seen any yet. And so I'm anxiously awaiting those reviews to come out and see what kind of debate this starts.
Well, you hope that they bring out that part of the story so that we can have this discussion. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess a happier story is next on my list, right? Perhaps maybe a little bit of a happier love story, because I very much enjoyed After You by Jojo Moyes, which is the follow-up to Me Before You.
I've read Me Before You and enjoyed it quite a bit, yeah.
Oh, it was my favorite read of 2013. I love to cry with a good book, and this one just left me weeping. I was weepy, as they say in Britain, because it is a British novel. So Me Before You, as you know, is the story of Louisa Clark and Will Traynor, two completely different people who end up falling in love. Will becomes a quadriplegic after an accident, and Lou is sort of finding herself, very blue-collar background, and she takes a job caring for him. And they teach each other about life and fall in love in the process. But Will, the entire time, wants to end his life because he sees no value in it, and Lou's goal is to get him to see the beauty in life, including being with her. Well, after you pretty much gives away by the title
Yes.
what happens. So I don't think it's any secret that Lou has had to move on alone. But the story picks up with her life after Will, and she has her own accident. She does come out of it okay, but that accident leads to a couple of chance meetings and a reuniting with her family. And so there's the possibility that she may heal after all. She joins a support group, a grief support group, so you meet some of the characters there. You get to know a little bit more about her family, and you learn about a very special young person who takes over Lou's life in an important way. This one wasn't nearly as emotional for me. There were no tears.
Oh.
But I really thought it was a worthy sequel because we get to return to her life. How did she pick up the pieces after Will? And we do find out that she's going to be okay, I think. The ending was really satisfying for me. I don't think this is the end. I think there may be more. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we see Lou in a third book in the series. I would really look forward to seeing what happens after. Well, switching gears a bit to history, I wanted to talk about Stacy Schiff's work, The Witches, Salem 1692, mostly because I actually finished it, and it was about that thick. I thought if I could finish that book for this, I had to talk about it. And I picked it up because I love Schiff's book, Cleopatra, which is a wonderful biography of one of the most captivating, most powerful women of all time. My wheelhouse when it comes to nonfiction are powerful female stories. So I was excited to read this new book, The Witches. I haven't been to Salem. Have you been out?
Never.
Yeah, I haven't been out there, but I read Hawthorne and The Crucible. And of course, the fascination of Halloween came about because of what happened for a very brief period. We're only talking a few months in 1692, but Salem and that part of Massachusetts has made a cottage industry of the events of just a few months of several hundred years ago, and it continues to captivate and inform our narrative of current times. Mass hysteria started in 1692. So Schiff pulls together all the characters and the events of that brief period in time in a really intense narrative. There's a cast of characters at the beginning of the book that's pages and pages long with a brief description, and you need to refer to that often because there are so many people. It really started out with several young girls who said that they were at the heart of the accusations, accusing all these women of possessing them and riding on broomsticks, and all these things that you hear about came from primarily very young women. And I didn't know about that. I also didn't know that men were accused of witchcraft. Several of them were hung, including a very prominent minister. And that if you confessed to being a witch, you weren't hung. You were spared. So only those who refused to admit to their witchcraft were killed. 19 people were hung. 1 man was crushed to death over that period of time. Schiff really puts that hysteria into the larger context of the politics of the time. This is when Puritans were just colonizing the area. There were a lot of conflicts between the Indians at that time. And then England plays a part because they're not quite sure how to deal with this new colony so far away. Cotton Mather, that we've all heard about. I learned a lot about him. He wrote quite a bit about the witchcraft of that time. It was interesting, but very intense. And it took me quite a while to read it, but I would highly recommend it if you like hardcore history and just learning a little bit about how this country came about after the English colonized it.
Sounds like you kind of become an expert just by reading this one book.
There was so much information, unbelievable. I think a second reading would be in order. I'd pick up more from it. Now, I enjoyed Cleopatra. I read it once and listened to it a second time, so maybe the audiobook on this one, I might look for that. So speaking of history, you read another historical fiction. Is that in your wheelhouse?
I do like that, yes. But I wouldn't say that I only like historical fiction. I dabble in a few different areas.
Well,
but
in this case, you picked up The Secret Chord by Geraldine Brooks, which is a novel that brings to life the biblical David. What did you think?
It's so beautifully written. Brooks is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, and her son picked up the harp. And upon listening to him play Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah,
Beautiful.
she was inspired to write the story. And so, David's life is quite the story. It's pretty amazing. From killing Goliath to rising from a shepherd to a king. He has, Jesus descends from him. He just has a very impressive life, love life, I should say. His first wife was a princess. His last wife was Bathsheba. Plus, he had a lot more wives, a lot of concubines, and this really covers it all. But it's all told by Nathan, the prophet. But if anyone is looking for, inspirational reading, I don't think you find it here. David really is willing to do whatever it takes to win the battle, to become king, to win at everything. And while he does fear the name, which is what they call God throughout, he sins a lot. There's murder, treachery, adultery, injustice, really bad parenting. And David just doesn't seem to have that soul, except when it comes to music. Like the scenes in which David is involved with music are the most soaring parts of this novel. So, in the Bible they talk about this David dancing. That was the highlight of this book. It just is so beautifully written. And then the final, it ends with David dying, but it is a celebratory moment as they are preparing Solomon to take over, and the streets are rising in music, and it's just this beautiful send off for David. It just was, it really delivered a great, just really great evocative scenes that filled your senses. And so on my way here, I did listen, I think 7 or 8 times to Jeff Buckley's version of Hallelujah.
I love that
which is
version.
just, fantastic, and was getting me in the mood for this talk. It was just a beautiful and enjoyable read. I find it interesting when I read historical fiction how someone can flesh out a story and make it deeper and create a whole new experience. And so that's why I like historical fiction.
So does she give some notes at the end? Do you have any sense of how historically accurate her book might be?
There wasn't a lot of that. There was a note about thank you to somebody who helped me to a couple people who helped me figure out how David would have won this particular battle, but there wasn't a lot about it. I mean, the thank yous were about a page and a half.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting read, I think, for those folks who may enjoy Christian fiction. This may not be what they think of when we say Christian fiction.
I would not recommend this to, somebody who enjoys Amish writing. This is more of a literary read, and it's about 80% sin. And some of it is quite grotesque.
Yeah, it's good to know that when we put stickers on books and we label things because sometimes that's helpful to our readers, but important to know that this is more historical fiction rather than Christian fiction.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to close out this part of our session by recommending local author Alan Esken's latest book, The Guise of Another.
Yes, Alan.
Alan Esken is a criminal defense attorney from Mankato. Really nice guy. If you like mysteries, get a chance to see him. He's going to be out and about promoting this book. So I highly recommend that people check it out, go and talk to him, because I think his journey is really interesting. Didn't plan to be a writer, didn't know that college would be for him. And now not only is practicing attorney, but has his first book, which is The Life We Bury, with all kinds of accolades, including becoming a finalist for a coveted Edgar Award. He told the story, I saw him last Thursday, and he told the story of how he got to go to New York for the final. He was a finalist for Best First Novel and was in the same room as Stephen King. I mean, that doesn't get much better than that, right?
I've talked to him about The Life We Bury, and he's so humble. He just is so surprised that any of this has happened. We've had his wife call up some of our libraries and say, I hear that your book club is covering my husband's book, and he would be interested in coming and talking to you about it with like 2 days warning of the book club. And so, we try to hurry and publicize that event. It's just so wonderful to have that deeper conversation about his writing, and he's a great person to talk to too about the process of writing.
Yes, absolutely. He's been to the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, among other places, to kind of hone his craft. The second book is The Guise of Another, just came out, another mystery that features a relatively minor character from The Life We Bury. It's one of the detectives who helps Joe, the protagonist.
The link, huh?
Yep, so there's a bit of a link there. It's Max Rupert. And so actually Max is worried about his brother Alexander, who really is the main character for me in this book. Alexander's marriage is crumbling, and he's also facing corruption charges. Yeah, it's bad. He's up in Minneapolis. But Alexander comes across the case of a man who was killed in a car accident, who is not who he has said he is. So there's this, that's what he's in the fraud division right now. And he's trying to unravel who was this person. He thinks by solving this case, he will get his wife back and he will be able to clear himself of these charges. But it's really a dark, twisty book, darker than The Life We Bury.
Okay.
And Alan said that last week. He goes, because I told him I really liked The Life We Bury, but I liked The Guise of Another even more. And he said, oh, it's even darker. Maybe I just like dark, twisty books.
Is it gory? Is it?
Not particularly gruesome.
It doesn't sound like there's so much murder or anything like
that.
that.
Well, no, I take that back, because there's the other main character is a Ukrainian henchman who has his own dark, twisty past. And so, yeah, there is a little bit of violence that's played out on the page. So, yeah, there is a little bit of that. But if you like a lot of action, Paige Turner, this might be the book for you.
All right.
I really think that this is a tightly written book. I think this is just the start of Alan Esken's great career.
It's exciting to see an author emerge from our area.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting such rave reviews from people all over the country. He sold the movie rights to The Life We Bury. Doesn't have a lot to do with it now because this was his first book, but he said they were really happy with the company they sold the rights to. And I said, who's going to play Joe, the main character? And he said, I can't tell you because someone big has read the book and wants to play Joe. I know. But then the other character, Carl from The Life We Bury, Vietnam veteran, who's in prison for all those years, he said he always thought perhaps Billy Bob Thornton in that role. So we'll see what happens.
That could be good.
Yeah, it could be. So finally, Stacy, what are you reading now?
Well, what I'm going to talk about is completely different than anything we really have talked about before. It's The Class by Sloane Crossley. And she has written a couple collections of humorous essays, but this is her first novel. And she's bringing 3 college friends back together at a wedding. So it's several years past college, and each chapter is switching from one of the friends' perspectives to another. And so far, I'm getting that the book is about, how little it takes to unwittingly ruin a person's life and how little it takes to save their life. And, I picked this book up because I laughed so hard at her essays that I was crying. And this is supposed to be a very humorous novel, and so far it's, a little laugh, little there, but it's supposed to be madcap journey. So I haven't gotten to the madcap part, but I'm looking forward to it. But if you read her essays, make sure to read the one about her playing the old computer game Oregon Trail. It is hilarious.
I loved that. We did Oregon Trail. 1st and 2nd grade, you'd go to the ginormous computer, the dot matrix printer. Oh.
Yes, and so she would put in her teachers' names and then set them up for a horrible death.
Oh, no.
I'm so sorry I'm saying this when both my parents are teachers, but it was very funny. And she's a very Gen X writer, so I wouldn't recommend her writing to everyone because I think she really speaks to the Gen X audience. But 40-somethings are going to love her writing. So this is, very fresh, very contemporary, but definitely the allusions she makes to culture are for Gen Xers.
I will look forward to that.
Okay.
Well, I'm reading House of Thieves by Charles Balfour.
Sure.
And this is historical fiction. Again, we've done a lot of historical fiction today.
I think it's good for fall. Like, you need a little historical fiction as you kind of look at the prairies and you think about the cycle of life. And
okay, because I was reading a little lighter stuff in the summer, and yeah, I'm going a little bit darker now. So this novel's set in New York in the Gilded Age. You have the Knickerbockers, and social customs are so important, family status, and there is a proper protocol for everything. Well, it features the Cross family. The eldest son has just graduated from Harvard, but he has all these gambling debts and a mob boss.
I love it already.
Yes. Well, the mob boss connects with George's dad because George's dad is an architect, and they become partners. And because he's an architect, he has all the designs on all of the homes of these famous people. So he can figure out how to steal their fortunes. The wife gets involved because she knows where all the women keep their jewels. And she knows who has the most expensive clothes and where they, behind the panels of their closets, because she's had tours of all of these places, because that's what the rich people do in New York. They visit each other's homes and show off their wealth. Well, there are 2 younger children, and they're making friends with nefarious, younger, criminally minded people. So there you go, the house of thieves.
The family business.
It's becoming the family business. I'm about halfway through, and I really like the historical detail, but I also love the husband and wife, the parents, because their relationship is becoming better as they become criminals together. They're finding a connection. And all of a sudden they're falling in love with each other again.
An interesting counseling technique.
Yeah. I'm enjoying it, and I'm sure I'll be recommending it once I finish it and see where this Cross family ends up. Oh, the father, his brother is a member of the Pinkerton Detective Agency. So is he going to break the case and put all his entire extended family in jail? I don't know. We'll have to see.
Or can he help throw the police off the trail?
Maybe. I don't know where this is going to take us, but it's a good story, and it's going really fast.
Read on. I
Right?
can't wait. I'll have to pick it up myself.
Well, this has been so much fun. Now I have several books to add to my list.
Me too. A couple of yours, well, one of yours was already on my list, but now I think I'm going to have to add them all.
I'm going to have to definitely pick up Sloane Crosley. Heard so much about her, and I'm glad you liked her essays. So, and really that's all the time we have for today. But for more book recommendations and new releases, check out our website at www.newulmlibrary.org, or find us on Facebook, or stop in and say hello. We'd be happy to talk books with you. Thanks for watching, checking in. We'll see you next time.